A beautiful young college student with the rest of her life ahead of her disappears after a night partying with her friends. Still, to this day, 9 years later, we still don't know what happened. This is the case of Lauren Spierer. Hey everyone, my name is Claire, and this is a new series I'm starting called Claire's Case Files, in which I dive deep into the possibilities of what happened to a missing person. Today's case is a case that has intrigued me for a really long time. I can't even remember when I learned about this case, but when I did, it never really left my mind. I've always wondered about Lauren, where she would be, if she would have a family, what kind of job she would have pursued, and it's really haunting and sad. I'm hoping by making this video that I can shed some light on her beautiful life and what great things she did for her community and for her faith, and hopefully bring someone forward who might know something. Lauren was born on January of 1991 to parents Robert and Charlene Spierer. She grew up in Scarsdale, New York, which is a small city outside of New York City. She is described by friends and family as being really smart and caring, which is seen through all of the volunteer work that she did throughout the years. She's also described as being a fashionista and also really outgoing with lots of friends. Additionally, she was very active in her Jewish faith and even attended Hebrew school growing up. She went on to go to a camp called Camp Tawanda, which was a co-ed Jewish sleepaway camp. It was there that she would meet her future college boyfriend, Jesse Wolf. She also met a boy named Jay Rosenbaum at this camp, who would go on to play an important role the night of her disappearance. These names, Jesse and Jay, are really important to remember going on. Continuing on with Lauren's story, she graduated high school in 2009 and decided to attend Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana that next fall. Being voted best dressed by her other high school seniors, it's no surprise that she decided to study textiles and merchandising at Indiana University. She continued being active with her Jewish faith into her college years, and actually the summer before she disappeared, she went to Israel to plant trees for the Jewish National Fund. Something important to keep in mind about Lauren is that she actually suffered from a rare heart condition called long QT syndrome. This heart condition can lead to heart arrhythmias and irregular heartbeats, which can lead to dizziness, fainting, and sometimes death. This is important to keep in mind because this condition can be aggravated by drinking and substance use, which was said to have occurred the night that Lauren disappeared. Some people think that this might have had to do with her disappearance, but before we get into that, I'd like to just start with the timeline of the night she disappeared. On June 3rd, 2011, Lauren was a sophomore in college and was looking forward to the end of her semester. She wanted to go out that night with friends and celebrate before the summer came. Many people would see her out that night drinking and having a good time, and there was also security footage of her, but we still don't know exactly what happened. What we do know for sure is that late in the night on June 2nd, 2011, Lauren met up with a friend who lived in her apartment building named David Ron. They both lived in the Smallwood Plaza apartments, and they decided to go to a friend's apartment at 5 Northtown Homes. The friend that they were meeting was Jay Rosenbaum, the same friend that Lauren had met at Camp Tawanda many years ago. They would also be joined by his neighbor, Corey Rossman, who would hang out with them throughout the night. The four of them hung out at Rosenbaum's apartment until 12:30, when David Ron said that he left to go back home to his own apartment. He actually was given a polygraph test to see if he was telling the truth, and he ended up passing, although polygraphs aren't the most reliable indicator and aren't admissible in court, so he could be telling the truth, but it's not 100% certain. Lauren stays behind and decides to head out to Kilroy Sports Bar and enters the bar at 1:46 a.m. using a fake ID. Witnesses saw her there, but weren't sure if she was meeting someone there or if she was just hanging out by herself. Either way, she left the bar at 2:27 a.m. with Corey Rossman. She left behind her shoes and her cell phone, which is pretty alarming. The two of them walked together the 2 blocks from the bar back to Lauren's apartment at the Smallwood Plaza Apartments. But somewhere in between the time where they got to the building and went in the elevator and then got up to the 5th floor where Lauren lived, Rossman got into an altercation with another IU student. This student's name was Zach Oakes, and although we're not exactly sure what happened, obviously enough happened for Oakes to have punched Rossman in the face, which happened. The next timeline gets really confusing because we're not exactly sure what happened, but what we do know is that Oakes got mad at Rossman and ended up punching him in the face. What Rossman says happens is that Oakes involved himself in what him and Lauren were doing and saw how intoxicated she was and intervened and said she needed to go home, and Rossman got upset and ended up cussing at him, causing Oakes to punch him in the face. Either way, after this point, Rossman claims that after the punch, he was so blacked out that he doesn't remember what happened. He claims that he was concussed from this punch and it wiped his memory for the rest of the night. How convenient. After that strange punch, for one reason or another, Lauren decides not to go into her apartment after all, and her and Rossman head back to his apartment. We don't really know why or what exchange happens at this point, or, if Lauren is just concerned because her friend got punched. We don't know. But what we do know is that at 2:48 a.m., Lauren is seen on surveillance footage. This surveillance footage shows Lauren walking in an alleyway between Morton Street and College Avenue. After this, she's seen on the footage at 2:51 a.m. walking out of this alley and into an empty lot near the 5 North townhomes where Rosenbaum lives. This whole alleyway situation is really strange because she is seen with someone on this footage, but the police haven't released who it is. I would assume it's Rossman, but they haven't said. So I'm not sure if they're trying to keep that kind of information tight-lipped or they're just not sure and can't make out who it is. Either way, Lauren ends up leaving her purse and her keys in this alleyway, and they would find it later during the search. This again is really concerning because there's no sign of a struggle in this alleyway, and there doesn't seem to be anything distressing on this footage, but she still leaves behind this really important stuff. Maybe she was under the influence and, wasn't sure where she was or what she was doing and just decided to set it down. Now, after this footage, what we do know is that Lauren and Rossman go back to his apartment, and he actually does have a roommate named Mike Beth who corroborates this and says that he saw the two coming back and they were both intoxicated after going to the bar. Now, what Beth says happened is that Rossman was really under the influence and stumbling around and trying to go up the stairs and actually got sick. So he decided to help him and bring him upstairs and put him in his bed because he couldn't do it himself. Now, here we have two conflicting stories of what happens next. There's been two stories told by Beth, and we're not exactly sure which one is true. There are two versions out there, and I haven't been able to find which one the police think is accurate or not, but I'm not sure if they know. Either way, I'm going to tell both versions of events. So in one version of events, Beth says that he helped Rossman upstairs, and then when he came back downstairs, Lauren was gone. She didn't say anything, and she had just left. Now, in the other version of events, Beth comes downstairs and Lauren is still there, and he tries to persuade her to stay the night. He knows she's under the influence and doesn't want her walking alone, but she's insistent on going home. Regardless of what version of events is true, what we do know for sure through call logs is that Beth called Jay Rosenbaum at 3:30 a.m. This is the same friend that was hanging out with them earlier before they went to bars, and the same friend who had known Lauren since Camp Tawanda. So Beth apparently calls Jay and asks him to take care of Lauren because, according to him, she's still drinking, she's still trying to party and, convince Beth to party with her, and he just can't handle it and he needs someone else to take care of her. So Rosenbaum apparently agrees, and Lauren comes over to his apartment. And he claims that there was a bruise under her eye, and when he asked her about it, she said that she had no idea where it came from, which I find kind of not that strange, because if she had been out, if she had been at bars, they're pretty crowded, and maybe someone accidentally hit her or she fell and got an injury through that way. Next, at 4:15 a.m., Rosenbaum makes 2 calls, and one of those is to David Ron, who was hanging out with the 2 of them earlier that night. He doesn't pick up. Rosenbaum calls another friend who hasn't been named, and the same friend doesn't pick up either. Supposedly after this, at 4:30 a.m., would be the last time that Lauren is ever seen. Rosenbaum claims that Lauren said she had to leave and, wanted to go back home, and so she left his apartment, and he saw her last outside of his window at the intersection of 11th Street and College Avenue. There were supposed sightings of her possibly after this time, but none of them have been confirmed. I think one of them was by a homeless man in the area, and he died shortly after he told police about this. And again, it hasn't been confirmed or corroborated, so I decided not to include it. It was first discovered that something was wrong and something had happened to Lauren that next afternoon when Jesse Wolf, her boyfriend, kept trying to call her and she wasn't picking up or texting back, and he wasn't getting any kind of answer from her. Eventually, later that afternoon, Jesse Wolf actually got a call from the bar that Lauren had been to the night before, and if you remember earlier in the story, she had left her phone at the bar, so this person was basically calling him and saying, "We found this phone and it's at the bar. It was left at the bar last night." So that concerned Jesse right away, that Lauren had left her phone behind, and also the fact that she hadn't returned yet or tried to get it. This really concerned Jesse, and he decided that the next best step would be to contact Lauren's roommate and get an extra key from him. So after getting this extra key, he went to Lauren's apartment and tried to see if possibly she was there, maybe sleeping, and of course she wasn't there and there was no sign of her. So at 4:30 p.m. that same day, Lauren's friends reported her missing. Shortly after this, Lauren's parents were notified that something had happened to Lauren and that she had disappeared by her sister, Rebecca. Now, after finding this out, Lauren's parents called anywhere they could think of, as any parent would. They called hospitals, they called all of her friends, and no one seemed to know anything. So they decided to make the trip from New York to Bloomington, Indiana to look for her. What happened in the next few days and weeks was a blur of tips and searches. Even though Lauren's story was all over the media, on Good Morning America, on other national TV shows, there still weren't any credible tips coming in. So Lauren's parents decided to offer a $250,000 reward for anything that would lead to Lauren. Still, they had hit a dead end, and even to this day, we still don't know what happened to Lauren Spierer. However, although there aren't a lot of concrete tips when it comes to this case, there are a lot of theories, and most of them do involve Rosenbaum and Rossman. Even Lauren's parents think that they know more than they're saying, and they have information that they aren't giving to the police. The 2 of them, along with Jesse Wolf, have gathered a lot of suspicion over the years, and this is because they really haven't cooperated with the police, as well as a few days after Lauren's disappearance, they lawyered up, and they even refused to take polygraph tests with the police. And a lot of people think that this makes them look really guilty, and I'm inclined to agree. I think that if they were innocent, why would they be refusing so much of the police requests? Why would they not be cooperating and wanting to give as much information as possible, considering they were the last people to see her? Either way, Lauren's parents are of the belief that they know something and are hoping that maybe they'll come forward after all these years and tell what they know. Before I fully address Rossman and Rosenbaum and Wolf's possible involvement in this case, I'd like to just briefly touch on another theory that Lauren's parents have brought up. So they believe that something may have been slipped in Lauren's drink the night that she was out at the bar. And this could be possible. She appeared very under the influence, and that can happen when, someone slips something into your drink. However, the boys that she was with have said horrible things about Lauren and claimed things such as that she did a lot of substances, and that's the reason why she was acting that way. Now, I'm not going to say for sure if she did one way or the other. I don't think that we should speculate about a missing person and a victim and slander their name as these people have been. And Lauren's parents are very adamant that she did not do illegal substances. I'm more inclined to believe what her parents say over someone who is accused of her disappearance. So we're just going to go with the fact that Lauren had been drinking and that was it. Now, I'm just going to humor this idea for a moment and say that Lauren either was drinking heavily or doing substances that night. Now, the theory goes from here that her heart condition was aggravated by this activity. As we know, her long QT syndrome could be caused by substances or drinking. And the theory goes from here that she had some kind of freak accident due to her heart condition and either passed out or died or something. And this was in the company of the men she was with that night. Now, from here, people are speculating that the men didn't know what to do with her body. They didn't want to get in trouble because either they were doing substances too, or they had some kind of involvement, either giving her the substances or, having them in their apartment. And so they disposed of her body in order to not get in trouble. Now, I find this theory to be the least possible out of all of the ones proposed. This is because they live off campus. They don't live in a dorm. So if they were doing substances, no one's just going to come into their room and look for substances. You can't do that, unless you have a warrant. I would get it if they lived in a dorm room, if they would be scared that, a resident assistant would search the room and, find substances and they could get in trouble, but they live off campus. So I don't know why they would be worried that someone would find anything in their room. I feel like if something had happened to Lauren and she would have had some freak heart problem, then they would have called for help because there really was no immediate threat of repercussion. And at most schools, I'm not sure about Indiana University, but there's something called medical amnesty where if you get help for someone who's doing something illegal, then you can't be found guilty of doing the same thing. So like if you were drinking underage and you call for your friend who's sick from drinking underage, then you won't get in trouble for drinking underage, if that makes sense. But I'm not really sure if that applies there. And with them living off campus, I'm not sure if the same rules apply to them. But either way, they could have just called an ambulance if something was happening to Lauren, and I feel like they really wouldn't have been questioned about what they were doing, what was in their room. They would have been asking about Lauren, is she okay? Was she doing anything? And even if they had said she was doing illegal substances, I don't think that the question would have been, oh, are you doing them? Do you have them in your room? No, they would have said, how much? Oh, at what time of night was she doing this? So that they know how to treat her. So I really don't understand where this theory comes from. To me, it seems really improbable. Now, a theory that I find a little more likely than this is that this case is somehow related to the Hannah Wilson case, where another IU student was found dead 10 miles from the campus in 2016. In that case, they did find the person who had done this, and his name was Daniel Messel, and he was kind of a known creep in the area. He had harassed and done horrible things to women around the campus, and in 2012, he was accused of harassment and assault, and so he is currently facing charges for those. But there was something called his danger zone in which he liked to hunt for women and prey for women. And this is actually the same area that Lauren was last seen in when she was leaving, the apartment and she was heading home. This kind of falls in the same area, the danger zone. And so people think that maybe Messel saw her and she was a victim of his. I do think that this is possible. I mean, he was a known predator in the area. However, the Spierer private investigator has adamantly denied this and said he does not think that there's any kind of connection and that it's just sort of a red herring. But I think it could be possible. I mean, he was known to drive around at night looking for victims. You know, Lauren did just disappear in the middle of the night, so I do think it's possible. The theory that I want to focus on for the rest of this video and go in more depth about is the possibility that the last men that Lauren were with, Beth, Rossman, and Rosenbaum, all have something to do with her disappearance. I find them all very suspicious, especially the fact that Rossman claims that he can't remember what happened after he was punched. That just seems very convenient to me. Like, you know, he's just looking for an excuse to not be blamed for any of the events or not have any answers. And so I do think that he was involved in some way. Now, I do not think that Jesse Wolf, her boyfriend, was involved. They really looked into him, and his roommate actually said that he was watching a basketball game all night and he went to bed at 2:30 a.m. and that was way before Lauren disappeared. So I feel like there's really no way that he could have been involved in this. So I'm kind of going to leave him out of this theory. But as for the other three men, their stories seem not right. Even if none of the men were in their right minds and they were intoxicated, I don't understand why they let Lauren go back to her apartment. She didn't have her keys, she didn't have her phone, she didn't have her shoes. How did they expect her to get back into her apartment without her keys? She also didn't have her cell phone to call anyone to let her in. So did they just expect her to wait outside all night until someone saw her, or what? That really doesn't fit with me. There's also no footage of Lauren leaving the 5 North Townhomes apartments. There's no footage of her heading back to her apartment. There's really no footage of her on the way back to say that she even left that building. In my opinion, I think she never left that apartment building. Or if she did, she wasn't alive when she did. I think that something happened to Lauren in either Rossman or Rosenbaum's apartment. And I think that Mike Beth knows a lot more than he's saying. Ever since I heard about this case a few years ago, I've racked my brain trying to think of a reason why these 3 guys who were seemingly her friends would harm her or cause her to disappear in some way. And it's really hard for me to think of any kind of motive. The only one that keeps coming to my mind is that maybe one of them made an advance on Lauren and she spurned him or rejected him, and then he retaliated and got violent towards her and things got out of hand. And before he knew it, you know, something really bad had happened to her. And at that point, either they were really scared and didn't know what to do and just kind of disposed of her body, or they thought up this elaborate story and told police that, yeah, she left this apartment so that they wouldn't look inside. Whether they had something to do with her disappearance or not, I really think these men know more than they're saying. They refuse to talk to police, which makes them look very guilty. And even after all these years, they still haven't, thought up any new details or anything, or even offered to help in any kind of way. If that was really their friend, then wouldn't they want to solve this just as much as everybody else? There still is the possibility that a random abductor saw Lauren on her way home, saw that she was intoxicated, and picked her up, and she was abducted that way. But I'm not really sure how reliable this is. There was no CCTV footage or any kind of camera footage of a car following Lauren or Lauren getting into a vehicle or any kind of sightings. But that doesn't rule it out. I do think that this could be likely and this could have happened to her. She was a very petite and short girl, and under the influence, she could have easily been overpowered and just grabbed and snatched and taken into a car somewhere. So I do think that this is possible. And people have also said maybe she is in human trafficking and was kidnapped for that purpose. And I don't discount that theory. However, I feel like it is someone she knows that did something to her. And I do think it's the 3 men that she was with that night. Lauren's parents seem to think that the three men had something to do with her disappearance too, because they sued them for negligence in a civil court, and actually the case was dismissed, but still I think that it was a really powerful move and showed them that they're not giving up on Lauren and they're going to fight for justice for her until they receive it. This case is just really heartbreaking, and the fact that 9 years later we're nowhere closer to knowing what happened to Lauren is really discouraging. When I first heard about this case, it really stuck with me because I feel like Lauren is just someone who all of us can relate to. She's someone who any of us would be friends with. Lauren was such a beautiful person and such a bright light in the world, and it's so unfortunate that her friends didn't take better care of her that night. I truly think that if someone had stepped in and taken Lauren home or taken better care of her, kept an eye on her when they saw how intoxicated she is, she would still be around. And that's a lesson to all of us, to take better care of our friends. If we see someone in this position who doesn't look like they're capable of taking care of themselves, we should take it in our responsibility to make sure that they're okay. But that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe and like, and comment down below a case you think I should cover next, and I'll try to do it in my next video. Thanks again. Bye.